I should have known something was wrong when Amanda Thompson, our newly appointed 31-year-old VP of Operations, started scheduling innovation workshops that mysteriously excluded anyone over 40. But after 23 years at Meridian Technologies, I'd grown comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. The morning everything changed, I was reviewing quarterly projections in my office, the same office where I'd developed the security protocol that had saved the company millions in potential breaches. The same office where I'd mentored dozens of young developers who now held senior positions across Silicon Valley. The same office that, though few knew it, I technically owned. Elizabeth? Amanda's voice cut through my concentration. She stood in my doorway, tablet in hand, HR director hovering behind her like a well-dressed shadow. Do you have a moment? I nodded, already knowing what was coming. I'd seen that particular HR expression too many times over the years, the carefully practiced blend of corporate sympathy and professional distance. Of course, I said, closing my laptop. Please sit. Amanda perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, her expensive blazer still carrying the stiff lines of recent purchase. She'd been with the company 3 months, brought in by our new CEO to modernize our approach. Apparently, modernization started with clearing out the old guard. Elizabeth, she began, her voice carrying that particular tone of rehearsed regret. We need to discuss your role at Meridian. I kept my face neutral, though I couldn't help noting how she gripped her tablet like a shield. I'm listening. The industry is evolving rapidly, she continued. We need to ensure our leadership team can adapt quickly to emerging technologies and changing market dynamics. She paused, probably expecting me to defend myself. When I didn't, she pressed on. While your contributions have been valuable, we feel the department needs fresh perspectives, more innovative approaches. I almost smiled at the irony. Just last week, I'd filed another patent for a blockchain security implementation that would revolutionize our client data protection. But Amanda wouldn't know that. She'd canceled our last 3 project review meetings. You're firing me, I said simply, saving her from more corporate euphemisms. She flinched slightly at the directness. We prefer to call it a strategic restructuring. Because I'm too old, I added, watching her squirm. That's not. This isn't about age. It's about cultural fit and innovative thinking. She slid a folder across my desk. We're prepared to offer a generous severance package, 6 months' salary, plus benefits continuation. I opened the folder, scanning the terms while doing quick mental calculations. The building's current lease with Meridian Technologies would expire in exactly 47 days. How interesting. When? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Effective immediately, the HR director spoke for the first time. We'll need you to clear out your personal belongings today. Jerry from it will help you transfer any necessary files. I nodded slowly, then reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my own folder. I'll need you both to sign this first. Amanda frowned. What is it? Just a personal property receipt, confirming I've removed all my belongings from the premises. They signed without reading it carefully, another example of the corner cutting I'd watched creep in over the past few months. I tucked the paper away carefully. It might prove useful later. Well then, I said, standing and smoothing my skirt. I appreciate your directness. Amanda looked relieved that I wasn't making a scene. You're taking this very professionally, Elizabeth. I admire that. I smiled, thinking about the letter sitting in my personal safe at home. The one from my property management company ready to be sent to Meridian's board. I believe in handling things professionally, always. As I packed up my office, younger employees darted glances my way, their whispered conversations carrying that mixture of pity and relief that comes from watching someone else's execution. They'd learned soon enough. Jerry from it supervised my digital exit with obvious discomfort. He'd started as an intern under my guidance 10 years ago. This isn't right, he muttered as he watched me delete files. You built half these systems. Things change, I said calmly. But remember what I taught you about backup servers and redundancy. He nodded, confused by the non sequitur. Good. That might be important soon. I carried my box of belongings through the lobby of the gleaming building that had been my professional home for over 2 decades. The security guard, Miguel, rushed to open the door for me. Ms. Walker, is everything okay? I paused, looking up at the soaring glass atrium I'd helped design during the building's renovation 5 years ago. It will be, Miguel. Take care of yourself. At home that evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my personal safe. Inside lay the fruits of 20 years of careful planning, property deeds, shell company documentation, and most importantly, the real ownership papers for 1120 Technology Drive, current home of Meridian Technologies headquarters. Years ago, when the company was still young and struggling, they needed capital for expansion. I provided it through a carefully constructed holding company, becoming their landlord without anyone in senior management realizing it. They'd been too busy counting stock options to read the fine print about who actually owned the building they worked in. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I rarely used. Stephen? It's Elizabeth Walker. Remember that contingency plan we discussed? Yes, it's time. Send the letters tomorrow morning. And Stephen? Make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with now. I hung up and walked to my home office window, looking out over the city lights. Amanda and her executive team would be working late, probably celebrating their successful restructuring. Let them celebrate. Tomorrow, they'd learn what real strategic thinking looked like. I picked up the property receipt they'd signed earlier, the one with microscopic text at the bottom acknowledging the building's true ownership structure. Insurance in case they tried to claim ignorance later. Too old for innovation, I murmured, sipping my wine. We'll see about that. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone buzzed with texts from other employees, expressing shock at my departure. I responded graciously to each one, saying nothing about what was coming. The best moves, as I'd learned over decades in tech, were the ones your opponents never saw coming until it was too late. I slept surprisingly well, knowing that in less than 8 hours, Amanda Thompson and the entire executive team would discover exactly what happened when you underestimated the wrong person. Sometimes the most powerful position isn't the most visible one. Sometimes real power lies in knowing exactly when to play the cards you've been holding all along. And tomorrow would be a masterclass in timing. The next morning, I took my time getting ready. Selected a crisp charcoal suit, my mother's pearl earrings, and the Cartier watch I'd bought after my first patent sale. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about power, and power dresses for the occasion. At precisely 9:15 am, my phone lit up with a text from Jerry Innate. OMG, all hell just broke loose. Board members arriving for emergency meeting. Amanda looks like she's about to faint. I smiled, picturing the scene. Stephen, my property manager, would have delivered the letters exactly at 9:00 a.m. One to every board member, the CEO, and the legal department. Each letter clearly outlining the building's true ownership, the approaching lease expiration, and the new terms. Terms that would triple their rent and require a complete renegotiation of their occupancy agreement. At 9:27 am, another text, this time from my old assistant, Marie. Security just had to bring Amanda water and a chair. She's hyperventilating in the conference room. What did you do? I didn't respond. Instead, I watched my email as the desperate messages started rolling in. First from legal. Urgent matter requiring immediate discussion regarding property ownership and lease terms. Then from HR. Critical oversight in recent personnel decisions. Please contact urgently. Finally, from CEO Daniel Morrison himself. Elizabeth, we need to talk. Name your time and place. I let them sweat for exactly 1 hour before responding to Daniel's email. Sterling Hotel. Noon. Private dining room. His reply came seconds later. We'll be there. I spent the next 2 hours reviewing documents with my lawyer, making sure every detail was perfect. The ownership structure of 1120 Technology Drive was intricate but ironclad. I'd spent years constructing it, using the same meticulous attention to detail that had supposedly made me too old for modern business. At 11:57 am, I walked into the Sterling's private dining room. Daniel was already there, along with Amanda, our CFO James Wilson, and 2 board members. They all stood when I entered. Funny how perspective changes so quickly. Elizabeth, Daniel started, his usual smooth confidence notably absent. There seems to be some confusion. No confusion, I interrupted calmly, taking my seat. The situation is quite clear. Walker Holdings owns this building, has owned it for 20 years, in fact, and your lease expires in 46 days. Amanda's face had taken on a greenish tinge. But the holding company, the ownership documents, were all properly filed and publicly available. I finished for her, though I understand why you might have missed them. You've been so busy organizing innovation workshops. James Wilson, who'd always prided himself on knowing every detail of company finances, looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. When you were also convinced that age automatically equals obsolescence. Daniel leaned forward, switching to his negotiation voice. Elizabeth, surely we can work something out. Your experience is valuable to us. Was valuable? I corrected. Yesterday, according to your team, I was too old to understand modern business. Today, suddenly, I'm experienced. Amanda started to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't. There's nothing to discuss about my employment. That bridge is burned. We're here to talk about your occupancy of my building. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. Amazing how many life-changing moments involve folders, and slid it across the table. These are the new lease terms. Triple the current rate, bringing it in line with market value. Non-negotiable. Daniel didn't even open it. That would devastate our operating budget. Yes, I agreed. It would. Alternatively, they all leaned forward. Alternatively, I continued, you could relocate. I'm sure your shareholders would love to hear how you need to spend $30 million on a new headquarters because you fired the woman who owned your building. The press would have a field day with that story. Tech company faces crisis after age discrimination backfires. Imagine those headlines. The room fell silent. I could practically hear their careers crumbling. You planned this, Amanda whispered. All along you knew. No, I said sharply. You created this situation. I just chose not to warn you about the consequences. One of the board members, Patricia Chen, spoke for the first time. What do you really want, Elizabeth? I smiled. Finally, an intelligent question. I want you to understand exactly what you threw away. Not just my experience or my contributions, but my strategic thinking. My ability to play the long game. All the things you dismissed because you couldn't see past my age. I stood smoothing my jacket. You have 24 hours to accept the new lease terms. After that, I'll start entertaining offers from other tenants. I understand several of our competitors are looking for premium office space. Wait, Daniel called as I turned to leave. What about a counter offer? Surely there's room for negotiation. I paused at the door. Interesting. Yesterday, there was no room for negotiation about my career. Why should there be room for negotiation about your future today? As I walked out, I heard Amanda burst into tears. Unprofessional, perhaps, but understandable. She just learned a very expensive lesson about judging people by their age. Back in my car, I found 17 missed calls and over 30 messages. Word was spreading fast. I started the engine just as my phone buzzed with a new text from Jerry. Board called all hands meeting for 3 p.m. Everyone's freaking out. Amanda's cleaning out her office. Holy shit, Elizabeth. You're my hero. I drove home, feeling strangely peaceful. There would be more drama to come, more attempts at negotiation, more desperate plays to save face. But for now, I had made my point. At 2:45 p.m., my lawyer called. They're preparing a response, he said. Want me to give you the highlights? No need, I replied. Just make sure they understand one thing. This isn't about money. This is about respect. He chuckled. Trust me, they're learning about respect very quickly. By evening, the story had started leaking to industry blogs. No names yet, but plenty of speculation about a major tech company facing eviction because they fired the wrong person. My phone kept buzzing with messages from former colleagues, each one more astonished than the last. I ignored them all, sitting instead in my home office, watching the sun set over the city skyline. The same skyline I could see from my old office. The office Amanda would be vacating very soon. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more negotiations, more attempts to resolve the crisis they created. But tonight, I savored the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in Meridian's headquarters, a group of executives was learning that innovation isn't about age. It's about wisdom, and wisdom, as they were discovering, sometimes comes with very expensive lessons. The media storm hit faster than anyone expected. By sunrise the next day, the story had exploded across tech news sites. Silicon Valley ageism backfires. Company faces eviction after firing building owner. I sipped my morning coffee, scanning the headlines on my tablet. TechCrunch, Business Insider, Forbes, they all carried variations of the story. Most focus on the delicious irony. A tech company's attempt to modernize by pushing out experienced workers had backfired spectacularly. My phone buzzed. A message from Patricia Chin, the board member who'd asked the intelligent question yesterday. Elizabeth, the board is meeting right now. We need you here. Not as a supplicant, as a consultant. You've made your point. Now help us fix this mess. I considered ignoring it, but Patricia had always been different from the others. More thoughtful, less caught up in the youth worship culture that had infected the industry. 1 hour, I texted back, and I choose who attends. Her response was immediate. Agreed. I dressed carefully again, this time in deep navy, the color of authority, not aggression. As I drove to the building, I reflected on how quickly power dynamics can shift when people finally see what was there all along. The lobby fell silent as I walked in. Miguel, the security guard, gave me a knowing smile and a slight bow as he swiped me through. Employees stopped their conversations to stare as I passed, their expressions a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Many had watched my departure in silence just 2 days ago. Patricia met me at the elevator. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. The board has been in emergency session since 5 a.m. Amanda resigned this morning. Daniel offered to do the same. I raised an eyebrow. And? We haven't accepted his resignation. Yet. We wanted to hear your thoughts first. The boardroom looked like a war room. Coffee cups everywhere, papers scattered across the massive table, tired executives slumped in leather chairs. Daniel sat at the far end, his usual immaculate appearance notably disheveled. I took my seat at the head of the table, the position I'd earned but never been offered before. Let's be clear, I began, my voice carrying in the tense silence. This isn't just about a building or a lease. This is about a systemic problem in tech, one that you've now become the poster child for. James Wilson, the CFO, winced. The press is brutal. Our stock dropped 12% at opening. Because investors realize you're being run by people who make monumentally bad decisions, I said calmly, firing someone without even checking if they might be your landlord. That's just the visible symptom of a deeper disease. How do we fix it? Patricia asked. I pulled out my own folder. I come prepared, of course. First, Amanda's entire modernization program needs to be scrapped. Age discrimination dressed up as innovation isn't just illegal, it's stupid. You've been pushing out decades of experience because you're obsessed with youth. Heads nodded around the table. Amazing how quickly people could see reason when their jobs were on the line. Second, you need a complete overhaul of your hiring and retention policies. I want to see explicit protections against age discrimination, mandatory diverse interview panels, and mentorship programs that value experience. Done, Patricia said immediately. Third, I continued, you need new leadership. Not just a CEO change, but a fundamental shift in how you view leadership itself. Daniel spoke for the first time. I assume you have suggestions. I do. I opened my folder. I identified 3 potential CEO candidates. All over 50, all with proven track records of actual innovation, not just buzzwords and flashy presentations. Their resumes are in here. I slid the folder to Patricia. The board can review them at their leisure, but understand this, my new lease terms will depend entirely on seeing real change, not just cosmetic fixes. And what are your terms? James asked nervously. I smiled. That depends on what you do next. Right now, you have 2 options. Option 1. Accept my original triple-rate lease, keep your current leadership structure, and watch your stock price continue to plummet as this story plays out in the press. They waited tensely for option 2. Option 2. Implement every change I've outlined, bring in new leadership that understands the value of experience, and I'll offer you a fair market rate lease with very favorable terms. Plus, I'll help you repair your public image by sharing how you're leading the charge against ageism in tech. The relief in the room was palpable. But, I added, I want one more thing. Name it, Patricia said. I want a seat on the board. Not as a favor, but as a recognition that the experience you tried to discard is exactly what you need to survive. The vote was unanimous and immediate. Over the next few weeks, Meridian Technologies transformed. Daniel resigned, replaced by Dr. Sarah Chen. a brilliant 58-year-old former CTO with multiple successful exits under her belt. The innovation workshops were replaced with mixed-age project teams that actually produced results instead of just talking about them. The press noticed. Tech companies' response to ageism scandal sets new industry standard, read one headline. Experience matters. How one company's crisis led to revolutionary change, read another. 3 months after my dramatic exit and even more dramatic return, I sat in my new board member office, coincidentally, my old office, reviewing resumes for our expanded engineering department. The youngest candidate was 22. The oldest was 67. Every one of them would be evaluated solely on their merit. Jerry from it stuck his head in. Elizabeth, you're going to love this. Remember that blockchain security patent you filed right before? Everything. I nodded. Google just offered to license it. 8 figures. I smiled. Tell them to add another figure if they want priority access to the neural network authentication system I developed last month. He grinned and left. Through my window, I could see new signs being installed in the lobby. Meridian Technologies, where innovation meets experience. My phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Board meeting in 10. Bringing Amanda's replacement for approval. She's 61 and has 3 decades of operations experience. I typed back, perfect. Standing at my window, looking out at the city I'd helped build, I thought about power, real power. Not the kind that comes from titles or corner offices, but the kind that comes from patience, wisdom, and the willingness to play the long game. A game that, as it turns out, only gets better with age. That evening, as I prepared to leave, Miguel called up to my office. Ms. Walker, there's someone here to see you. Says she's from Fortune magazine. I smiled. Send her up. The reporter was young, probably fresh out of journalism school. She clutched her notebook nervously as she sat down. Ms. Walker, thank you for agreeing to this interview. We're doing a feature on transformative leadership in tech, and your story, well, it's become something of a legend. A legend? I raised an eyebrow. Or a warning? She laughed. Maybe both. We're calling the piece The Silver Revolution. How one woman's stand against ageism changed Silicon Valley. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where Amanda had sat to fire me just months ago. Well then, I said, let me tell you about the real revolution. It's not about age or buildings or even power. It's about wisdom, and wisdom? That's something you can only earn with time. She started writing frantically as I began to tell the story, not just my story, but the story of every person who'd ever been dismissed, overlooked, or pushed aside because of their age. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong. It's changing the whole game. I should have known something was wrong when Amanda Thompson, our newly appointed 31-year-old VP of Operations, started scheduling innovation workshops that mysteriously excluded anyone over 40. But after 23 years at Meridian Technologies, I'd grown comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. The morning everything changed, I was reviewing quarterly projections in my office, the same office where I'd developed the security protocol that had saved the company millions in potential breaches. The same office where I'd mentored dozens of young developers who now held senior positions across Silicon Valley. The same office that, though few knew it, I technically owned. Elizabeth? Amanda's voice cut through my concentration. She stood in my doorway, tablet in hand, HR director hovering behind her like a well-dressed shadow. Do you have a moment? I nodded, already knowing what was coming. I'd seen that particular HR expression too many times over the years, the carefully practiced blend of corporate sympathy and professional distance. Of course, I said, closing my laptop. Please sit. Amanda perched on the edge of the visitor's chair, her expensive blazer still carrying the stiff lines of recent purchase. She'd been with the company 3 months, brought in by our new CEO to modernize our approach. Apparently, modernization started with clearing out the old guard. Elizabeth, she began, her voice carrying that particular tone of rehearsed regret. We need to discuss your role at Meridian. I kept my face neutral, though I couldn't help noting how she gripped her tablet like a shield. I'm listening. The industry is evolving rapidly, she continued. We need to ensure our leadership team can adapt quickly to emerging technologies and changing market dynamics. She paused, probably expecting me to defend myself. When I didn't, she pressed on. While your contributions have been valuable, We feel the department needs fresh perspectives, more innovative approaches. I almost smiled at the irony. Just last week, I'd filed another patent for a blockchain security implementation